Hey everybody, it's Ed Thompson. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina with Single Purpose Ministries. Our main goal is to help people with relationships. Relationships between them and God through Jesus Christ, relationships with one another, and relationships within themselves. All three are so very important, and so many times people just get stuck in one or all of those. Last week, we began to build a foundation for relationships, some place that would hold us firmly and truthfully. And let me give you an idea of what that entails. There are pillars we're putting into the ground and setting them. Each pillar is etched with a name or a word, actually, that starts with L. Now, the pillars words for last week, we talked about relationships with life. And that pillar was put in first. Then we talked a little bit about learning, another L word, and finally laughing. When you think about those words, don't you want relationships to have those? Of course you do. Now, there are more L's to come, and we're going to cover 2 more today and then a couple more next week. And with that said, how about the word lead or leadership? And I'm going to talk right now about how leading affected my life in ways that I can't thank a certain person enough for. The person was a retired Army colonel, lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I lived, and he was a leader. And I had the privilege of working with him for 13 years, side by side, helping men grow. Bill Spencer, this man, was a model at leading, and he showed me things just by the way he handled himself. In other words, I caught a whole lot. And then I was taught a whole lot. One thing he taught me was, Ed, if you want to be a good leader, you got to learn to be a good follower. Made sense. And I watched him follow the Lord Jesus, and I found myself attracted to following Bill because he was following God. And that's in the Bible, and I just saw it come to play in my life. He was a very punctual man. He was a positive man. When he said things, people just listened because he was always ready, it seemed, to say the right thing at the right time. So it helps to have relationships that just come into your life. And to this very day, you can see that I'm honored to say I knew Bill Spencer. He's gone now. One more thing he said, if you want to lead and lead well, start with yourself. You'll not lead anybody if you can't lead yourself. Boy, I picked up on that too. Folks, I'm going to pull back now on the leadership portion of things, only because I want to finish up with another example of leadership, but it would be better if I just waited to the end and let you maybe leave today thinking about this particular leader. So before we go there, let's go to the next L and the last L today, the link/connecting people. I love connecting people. I love it because I've watched people get familiar with one another, become deep friends, and then they start doing discipleship ministry with other men. And this has been my life, to watch other men do this, and fortunately to get involved with some of it myself. So you can see where I'm so bent in the right direction on good relationships. I also like to see good marriages. I also like to see when people who may be lying to themselves for some reason over the course of time come to a place of, I can tell myself the truth now. I'm relating better with me. Now, this is why we're here, and I'm talking about these things. And as far as connecting goes, I'm going to quickly take us off course and talk about a brain in our heads created by God that connects things about as well as any computer does. What do I mean? I mean these eyes right here. They're connected to that brain, and when I see a sunset and can't take my eyes off of it, the brain is connecting. And so are the ears when I hear beautiful music, or my nose picks up the warm fragrance of a coffee in the morning before being sipped. Finally, I think about my taste buds that do a major dance when I'm with one family member in my life. When she gets into the kitchen, game over. She is really talented with signature creations, and she's kind enough to let me partake of some. All of that to say, I'm just relating my senses in my brain and finding sensual pleasure. But there's another place I want to go this morning, and that's to the heart. Let's drop down 10 to 13 inches and go here, because I'm going to contend with you. This is where the deeper questions lie. This is where the real relationships are formed. Sure, it takes the brain to do that, but I'm talking about it's down here where the heart, and if you'll read about the heart in the Bible, you're going to hear a whole lot about the heart. It even goes on down into the gut part of things. But I'm not here to give you a lesson on that. I'm not sure I know enough. But when a 2-year-old looks at me and says, "I love you, Mr. Ed," that captures me. Or the people at CEF, and when I say people, they are little ones, 6 to 9, and they say, "Mr. Ed, tell me again about Genesis." And I say, "Gladly." And that captures my heart. So do many other things. So I'm here today to get specific. Over the years, I ask these questions. Lord, who am I really? And why am I here? And where am I going? And I truly got serious about it, but I couldn't find the answers. And it wasn't till later in life. In fact, when Bill Spencer came to my life, he began to open the Bible and say, let's see what God has to say about those questions. I'd ask him, and I found those answers in there. And I began to live those answers. So that tells you that I'm talking about deep-seated intimacy with God and with others. And now with me. Because I don't lie to myself. And as I've said before, I kind of like myself now. Now, enough of that. Right now we're connecting. I just connected with you, being a little vulnerable and not worried about it. So let me go back to the leadership. Leadership pillar, hadn't quite said it yet. We're going to move that connecting or linking pillar over there, but we're going to bring the leadership back now. I'm going to read about the greatest leader, and here is where I'm going to come from. One of the ending chapters in the book of Revelation, it was written by the Apostle John. He was one of Jesus' disciples. And here's what he's writing in the 19th chapter in the 11th verse. And I'm only going to read about 5 verses and then a little commentary. And then we're going to start winding up and getting ready for next week. But first, then I saw heaven opened, and a white horse was standing there. Its rider was named Faithful and True, for he judges fairly and wages a righteous war. The armies of heaven, dressed in the finest pure white linen, followed him on white horses. Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered together to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army. And the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who did mighty miracles in behalf of the beast. Their entire army was killed by the sharp sword that came from the mouth of the one riding the white horse. That's Jesus Christ. He's the leader I'm talking about. And let me finish up now with this comment. It says, the battle lines have been drawn, and the greatest confrontation in history of the world is about to begin. The beast, who is the Antichrist, and the false prophet have gathered the governments and armies of the earth that are under Antichrist's rule. The enemy army arrives, believe they have come of their own volition. But in reality, God has summoned them to battle in order to defeat them. That they would even presume to fight against God shows how their pride and rebellion have distorted their thinking. There really is no fight, however, because the victory was won when Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. Thus, evil leaders are immediately captured and sent to their punishment, and the forces of evil are annihilated. This is how it's going to end. And I never want to scare you or intimidate you, but this is not scaring and intimidating. All I'm doing is reading a book that's never been wrong, and it shows no leanings toward being wrong in the future. It's going to come about. But with that said, folks, I'm just connecting you. You may want to read that yourself. I love connecting people to this word. I've seen miracles happen. But right now, I just want to go back to thanking you for being here. Yes, we're going to look and we're going to listen next week. Whoa. As I mentioned last week, when you look, what do you see? And when you listen, what do you hear? We're going to address those. I thank you. I love you. Have a great week. And by God's grace, I'll be back to see you next Tuesday. Take care, folks.